thoughts on my mind, I can't sleep at night, so I just keep writing. I don't need no help, I don't need opinions, so don't waste my time then. Killing the game and I gotta go ask anybody, they all heard about it. They know when the kid and he's spitting it, know when he getting it, bit and I get in my way. Got this, I like do whatever I say, cause I could go put you on blast. People been mad at me cause I don't follow them back. I'm laughing cause that is so whack. Why they all trying to act like they been bossing when really their boss has been bossing them up? Nobody ever been telling me what I would do when I keep in the cash, for the shit out of luck. I want it more, now I get what I wish. Upgrading now with some pants that I whip. Making 6 figures, don't talk about it. Money ain't shit, it's about how you think. Tired of people who making excuses, then they complain about losing. Tell me about what you been doing, tell me about how you been moving. You ain't got nothing to prove then. I did it all on my own, they looking like all of my clones. I don't be following trends, fuck all the popular clothes. You faking and everyone knows. I just be keeping it real, they thinking that I have to go sign a deal, but really the people just found an appeal. I'm in my own lane and I'm steering the wheel, ayy. It's funny how it goes, funny how it goes. Working every night till the sunrise.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Once again, no false finish. It is season 5, episode 3, and we're doing a special episode. ACT! Alex Cardona Thompson, Mr. Money in the Bank as of this recording, taking over. But before we get to him hosting the show, we're going to do a little moment of silence for our good friend J-Town, which recently passed away, being one of the most memorable African Americans in XCW. So we're going to do a brief moment of silence. Pass it off to ACT. Go ahead, sir.
No, my real name's Jaden Jones, so we just put an X through Chris and put Jaden for this episode.
We could be related.
Who knows, man? Alright, first question. What got you into wrestling? Like, not just XCW, but into wrestling in general?
It would probably have to be my uncle. My mom was very young when I was born. When I was born. She was 16.
Yeah, you're definitely not my dad then, probably.
She was 16, and my uncle, I think he's a year younger than her, so they were still living with my grandma at the time. And obviously, my uncle, Stone Cold Tim, one day XCW Hall of Fame, who knows? Big Stone Cold Steve Austin fan. Every day. Obviously, back then it wasn't WWE. It was before WWF times, really. My uncle, watching wrestling all the time. My great grandpa watching wrestling all the time. Old school, Pat Patterson, all those people. But growing up, for me, when I was real young, it was always the Ultimate Warrior. And I get a hark back to the story of having little Ultimate Warrior underwear. Little fucking dangly tassels on my elbows, elbow on the ground, on the collarbone, jumping off the corner of the couch, breaking her shoulder. So probably have to say my uncle.
Okay. I don't think I'd ever want to break my grandma's shoulder, but...
I mean, I was a kid. I didn't know
maybe she didn't bake you cookies, so you're just like, screw this bitch, I'm doing it.
Potentially.
Alright. And you've got tons of championship wins, possibly the most of all time. Which one would you say is your favorite?
That's a tough one. I don't believe I have the most championship wins, but it is a very high number. And I'm going to have to go between 3 choices, and I'll give you a final answer after I name these 3 choices. Obviously, Greed, 2004, winning my first XCW championship against DTC in the first TLC match that I had. Second was January of 2013. I had come back from being incarcerated at the time and made a big impact against Fletch and Corey Lee, interfering in their match, ultimately leading to me getting a one-on-one match with Fletch for the World Championship and being able to defeat him. Or the third one being the match with Venom where we had established Venom as the unstoppable monster. He's still called that to this day. Beginning of the feud, Josh Fletch came to me and said, he's like, we need to do one thing in this feud. And I said, what's that? He said, we need Venom to be a monster, and we did that. And ultimately, it wasn't a Chris Jones thing. It was a Fletch thing. It was a Genocide thing. It was a Corey Lee thing. It was a Hazard thing. Ultimately, everybody had a little bit of spice in the Venom pot, making Venom the monster that he was. But being able to come back and have everybody's careers on the line, the high stakes, doing stuff that Venom said he'd never do. Venom said he'd never do. He'd never do barbed wire. He said he'd never do thumbtacks and all that stuff, even though he had done thumbtacks before that. But I got them to do barbed wire. Win that match, but I'm going to have to say probably Greed 2004, because when I first came in XCW, I wasn't friends with Fletch. I wasn't friends with Cynical. Wasn't really friends with Hazard. I mean, obviously, if I had to pick between the three, I'd say I was probably closest with Hazard, just for the simple fact we had played lots of basketball and football over at local school and stuff, but like Fletch didn't like me. Cynical didn't like me. I mean, I was a fucking douchebag. I've said that several times. But for Fletch to give a douchebag kid, an opportunity is like, hey, within 3 months being an XW winning the world title, we'll have to go with that. Greed. TLC with DTC 2004.
Alrighty then. And if you had to pick a past, a present, and a future of XCW, who would you pick for each category?
Wow. Well, we need a little drinky poo here. Past, present, and future. Past, I'm gonna have to go me. Present, it's a little more difficult, because there's lots of things that factor in. You factor on the people that have been here a long time. Obviously, I can go with the Corey Lees or the Tommy Merrimans or the Genocide or the Fletch, but I don't think that's particularly what the question's about. If you factor out all the veterans, the Corey Lees, the Genocides, the Fletches, and all them, I'm going to have to say the present. I would just instantly used to just blurt, say Brogan, but with this season wrapped up as of recording this episode, it's a lot tougher. I'm going to have to say probably Brogan or Jesse. Jesse, finally, after years, getting the world title win. That was something we wanted to push for at the beginning of the season, was we wanted to push Jesse. We wasn't sure if he could, get the kind of response that we needed. And even, one of the matches of the year, contenders, I guarantee, is his and Hayden's match. And even if it doesn't win match of the year, the loudest pop of the year would be Jesse finally winning the world title. And you gotta think about Brogan. Brogan, superstar of the year last year. And then going to this year, not doing a whole bunch, but ultimately using that excellent mind that Brogan O'Shea had, even though he was on the wrong side of the fence, we'll say, playing the heel. Blaming the conspiracy, cheating to beat Corey Lee, costing Corey Lee his Extreme King win, and going on to ultimately defeat me in probably the most brutal death matches. So Brogan or Jesse in the future is kind of less defined, but I'm gonna have to say probably ACT, Pacey, I don't know what his next thing, SAT, or depending upon how far you're going into the future, Jacoby, because XCW wrestlers, I know you watch this show, Jacoby can bump better than some of you.
He might not put anyone over though. When he do that figure show with me, wouldn't even let me put a gay man in the finals of the Royal Rumble.
Well, sounds like Jacoby. Honestly, I've worked, and obviously he's real young, he's 6. Getting ready to be 7. Getting ready to be 8, I lied. But he can bump, he can flip bump. I watched, I shit you not, in between matches on one of the wrestling shows, Josh was backstage giving directions for the next spot, and Jacoby was just beating the shit out of one of the neighbor kids.
Yeah, he does that all the time.
But it was I'm not saying choreographed, but it was an actual scripted thing. Like Jacoby, you know, hit the fucking corner post and did all this shit. So like Jacoby could, like, I'm not just saying because me and Josh are tight, but like Jacoby could honestly be, if XCW goes that far into the future, Jacoby could probably be that star.
Yeah, I've seen him kind of toss that neighbor kid around a few times.
Quite a bit.
So, all right. And, you know, you were, like you said, a huge Ultimate Warrior fan, but your moveset's full of moves. So, who would you say are the top 3 wrestlers you looked at when deciding some of these moves?
Are we just talking Chris Jones or any of the 4 characters that I played?
We'll go with just Chris Jones.
No, because that's a different answer than if you go the other ones. Well, to be honest, obviously when you play wrestling video games, you know, one of the first things most people do after they create the appearances, you go for the finisher. So I'd always go through, I'm like, I like that move, I'll pick that for my guy, I like that move, I'll pick that for my guy. But when I started getting into XCW and all that stuff, I would go to like YouTube, and I shit you not, I go like top 10 most dangerous finishers. And you get moves like, you know, you get the Canadian Destroyer, you get the Vertebreaker, you get all this stuff. But based off wrestlers, Randy Orton, obviously. Rey Mysterio for the high-flying aspect of Chris Jones. And definitely Chris Jericho, because like I'd say probably the first quarter, like back then we just imitated what we seen. We weren't trained or anything like that, and the person I imitated was Chris Jericho. You know, I do the Walls of Jericho. I used to do the Lion Salt, but we can't really jump off the ropes that we have. But I'd say probably Randy Orton, Rey Mysterio, Chris Jericho.
All good choices. And, you know, I think we're going to head into our commercial break, and then when we get back, we're going to dive into your obsession with the Ultimate X match. obsession with Ultimate X. If you were to bring back EBW, who are 5 people on the roster right now that you would want?
God, this is probably harder than the other question about the past, present, and future. Obviously, do I include myself in the 5, or is 5 people besides me?
5 people besides you. You're not active, so we'll go with that.
I mean, I gotta go with old, reliable, and I'm not saying old because he's one of the oldest people in the show. I'm just saying because he's been by my side in the Untouchables, by my side in the original EBW. I'm gonna have to go first pick James Cerebral. For the longest time, obviously besides me, there's no one that ate, that would breathe, that would sleep EBW other than James Cerebral. Like, he was that guy. And we're talking about people that are actually in the show right now, correct?
Yep.
As much as I hate to say it, the turncoat, I want Genocide. Kurt Aston. He turned on us the first time, but we had some of the most entertaining promos. We had really good matches with Corey Lee, and just me and Genocide could cut a promo about American cheese and make it funny. So give me Kurt Aston. And it doesn't matter if it's Genocide or Kurt Aston. We can make either work. 3. Give me Jesse Justice. Now, the original EBW we had me, we had James Cerebral, we had Genocide, technically Ryan Grayson against his will, and a couple other people, but we didn't have anybody the first time like Jesse Justice. The mind games Jesse could play, the way he'd get into people's heads, definitely give me Jesse Justice. 4th, you gotta have a young talent. I gotta have my Zach Washington. So taking the place of Zach Washington, give me Miano Diaz. Obviously EBW would not be a fan favorite, so it'd be a different side of the fence than Miano Diaz used to playing, but he's really good. I've worked with him, so give me Miano Diaz. And 5th, it's not Corey Lee, I'll tell you that. Give me one of 2 people. Give me Fletch. The ultimate surprise would be Fletch. Obviously, XCW being his baby that he built from the ground up, nobody would expect to have Fletch in EBW. Now, I could say Corey Lee, but if I say Corey Lee, like, oh, you just want Corey Lee because he's the one that helped in EBW. I could have said Emily Moore because she's the owner, but give me Fletch. And the other choice, the honorable mention I will say, is Hayden Bex.
All good choices. Now let's dive into your obsession with Ultimate X. So first off, what is the obsession with Ultimate X? You know, what makes it so great to you?
Well, the aspect of just the many different dimensions of the match. It's not just like, you don't have to climb up there. Like, there's several things you could do on the ground. You could wait for somebody to climb up. You could wait for them to fuck up, and you could take advantage of that. And for the longest time, like, if I wasn't watching pay-per-views with my uncle, I was watching pay-per-view at Fletch's house. And the first time, like, it's such a long time ago, but the first time I ever did a front flip was during a TNA pay-per-view at Mobile Home Villa in the trailer. We had this little stupid, non-existent blue wrestling mat that had no fucking padding whatsoever. It was me, it was Fletch, and Dylan Bostic, and we were watching a TNA pay-per-view, and they had an Ultimate X. I can't remember exactly who was wrestling, but it probably had AJ Styles in it, let's be honest. And just the different dimensions of, you know, I'm a high flyer, so I'll be one of the people that's going to climb up there. Like, I'd climb up, and I'd be the one doing the spots, like where, you know, someone drop kicks me, and I'll do the front flip to take the bump, or I'll fall down, someone catch me for a powerbomb. Like, I love taking, like, it sounds stupid because of the way my body feels these days, and, like, one of the reasons I don't wrestle anymore. But, like, I want to take those bumps, and, like, you look at all the Money in the Banks or the TLC matches, like the multi-man, like ladder matches and stuff like that. Like, I'm the one doing the corkscrew off the ladder. I'm the one jumping off the roofs. I'm the one taking the stupid FML off the ladder in the King of the Mountain match. And we had this spot, it goes back to when Fletch stabbed me in the face. I was supposed to wrestle again that day, at that cold day in hell. And I had the ladder match with, the last man standing match with Fletch first, and then we had a ladder match. And we had practiced several Ultimate X spots for that match. And it was the first time we had bought our weapons. Any other time it was 5-finger discount. But I had bought a ladder, and I had this tree, because it was at my dad's house, I had this tree in the backyard that was just perfect for Ultimate X spots. We could hang, we could do the flip bumps and all that stuff, and just, it's entertaining. Like, I could go out and have a headlock match with Genocide for 30 minutes. I can go out and do an Ironman match with Genocide for 30 minutes. And I guarantee we can make it good. But, you know, the thing that makes me pop, the thing that makes me jump out of my seat is I want to see people flipping over the top rope. I want to see someone getting a German suplex, holding a ladder, and then throw the ladder backwards and bust 2 people in the face behind him. Shout out to Fletch and John Streets. I want to see the corkscrews off the ladder or whatever. Obviously, you know, the cables in this match. And just the TLC match has always been Chris Jones's match. I'm the king of the TLC. Never been beaten without outside interference. Only lost 1 match ever. So that is my obsession with Ultimate X, and it's an entertaining match. Like, I don't know any Ultimate X match of any fan that's a fan of high flyers that has said that was not entertaining.
Okay, going off that question, amongst XCW's history, I'm talking you can pick anyone who's appeared in XCW. Who are you putting in an X Division match, and who would you have win it?
The Ultimate X match?
Yep.
Myself. Let's see, that's 1. I'm going to pick 5 people, because you can have any number, really. And I think 5 is a good number.
Okay.
Because we usually do 4 to 5 in Money in the Bank. 6, maybe. Tommy. Even though it's an Ultimate X match and Tommy's not going to be climbing on those cables very much, you got to have some type of powerhouse in the match. You got to have a powerhouse. So, me, Tommy. Let's go Cynical. Cynical not being the giant wrestling fan like, you know, Fletch or myself or Genocide or some of the other people. He's just entertaining to watch, and I guarantee we could probably do something really stupid with Cynical or convince him to do something stupid that he probably shouldn't do. Corey Lee. You know, how many people have a move to where I could fall off the cable and they could catch me for an FML? Or they could catch me for a Cyclone? Or they can catch me for a Sinometry? Not many people. The last spot is kind of difficult. Because I think 3 people fill that spot really well. I'm going to have to go Brogan. You got to have somebody besides one person that's going to take all the stupid bumps. And I guarantee me and Corey Lee aren't going to want to take every stupid bump. We'll take a lot of them. The other honorable mentions, once again, Hayden Vex. I just don't see him being that type of environment for him. I could be completely wrong. I've watched old XAWA shows and stuff like that. I don't know if it's just like location purposes, but like Hayden's good all around, so I don't necessarily see him being in that type of match per se. And you, I would say you don't take many flip bumps. And me and Corey Lee are old, and we need somebody to take some flip bumps. But that's my answer.
Okay, you know, another good pick, maybe, you know, Miano Diaz. He's new, but imagine him in an X Division match,
Newer,
Ultimate X.
the reason why I didn't pick someone like him being so new is because sometimes, like, obviously I'm professional enough that I can handle certain situations, but like, even when we go to the death match with like me, Hazard, Austin Chaos, like, me and Hazard knew going into that we were going to have to do most of this stuff. Like, Austin's a good wrestler, good on the mic, good all around, but we knew there was some shit that he just wasn't going to take. And Miano Diaz being so new to XCW, we wouldn't want to put him into a particular situation that we didn't feel that he would be comfortable in.
Okay. And what makes XCW different from the other companies you've been in or appeared for?
It's ran a lot more professionally. In XCW, if we take just the friendship aspect out of it, me and Josh Fletcher were not as close a family as we consider ourselves. Like if we just strictly business associates aside, just business associates. HCW, the very first company I wrestled in, a lot of people, like Genocide even forgets about HCW occasionally and just jumps straight to SBW. But there was HCW. It was at a park. We were imitating wrestlers. At any time, a storyline could change. My very first show back then, they drew names out of a hat to see who was going to win their equivalent of the Royal Rumble. And the winner would go on to, it was either face the world champion, which at the time was Justin Parsley, or become world champion. I can't remember exactly. Well, my first match, I was Joker. I debuted as Joker. I didn't debut as Y2J Chris Jones. I debuted as Joker, won the hardcore title against Suicide, Anthony Tharp, in like 7 seconds. Came out famous or bam, over. Why it was like that, I don't remember. But I drew the name of my name supposed to win the match. So like my first show ever, I'm supposed to win the world title or the match that's going to lead me to the world title. I was the last entrant too, so I left and went to Blimpies. Legit, left the middle show, went to Blimpies while they're doing the Royal Rumble equivalent. Come back, it's me, it's Hazard at the time, Tsunami. One other person, I think it was Ryan Wet Dream Riggs, I don't remember what his name was back then. So we eliminate them, and it comes down to me and Hazard. So we're fighting, I'm thinking, how the fuck am I going to throw him over the... Because it was like playground equipment was what we were doing it on. I couldn't get him over the top, and he wasn't giving me, he was potato sacking me. Not sandbagging, potato sacking. So he just picks me up, obviously Hazard's a big guy, he just picks me up and tries to throw me off the playground equipment. I'm thinking, what the fuck, I'm supposed to win this match. Luckily, I'm able to grab onto the playground equipment and save myself, so I come back in, I'm like, what's going on? So we fight some more, eventually he just throws me off and wins. So I lose this match that I was supposed to win originally. And then, ultimately, it's the same show. Hazard loses the match to Justin Parsley. And then beats me up and unmasks me and wins my hardcore title. So, like, just fucking chaos. SBW, I don't remember shit about it. I couldn't tell you about it. Probably why. I don't remember. It wasn't very good. BYWE. That is the... Like, if there was a professional at storylines changing, chaos, spur of the moment thing, that is BYW. You have someone get fired twice in the same show, shout out to Fletch. Still imitating, people. Fletch had NWO, Nick Klaus, and all those people. Just people that couldn't wrestle, like, no offense, Corruption, he wasn't very good. We had people like that. I was wrestling a match against Parsley. Justin Parsley, he threw a chair at my elbow, fucked my elbow up, stuff like that. And I never got a world title shot ever. I owned 2 of the belts that they used, never got a world title shot, and I was there every show. I didn't miss a show. We got in a car wreck. I was at that show. Fletch remembers the car wreck. I got grounded, wasn't allowed to go to the show. I snuck out my bedroom window. I was at that show. And then you go to XCW and EBW days. EBW was just like an extension of XCW. I used some of the XCW guys. I just wanted to wrestle more. Because at one point, we were wrestling 3 times a week. Imagine if the wrestlers had to wrestle 3 times a week now with as professional and as anal as Fletch can be when it comes to these shows. Imagine having to wrestle 3 times a week. So EBW was just an extension of that. It was never anything serious. And then UIW was revitalized as Parsley's company, which was a lot better than BYWE. But I had a lot better opportunities. It's ran more professionally. Myself, Fletch, and Hazard were able to get trained, even Genocide. We're able to get trained and pass on the knowledge that we have to other people, Corey Lee, Tommy Merriman, etc., and they pass on knowledge to Brogan, to Brady, etc., and then Brady and Brogan pass on their knowledge to you, Pacey, etc., so probably definitely XCW.
Okay, outside of XCW, you're writing video game articles now. So what has been your favorite game to write about?
It's easy. I could make up a million different articles about it. It is a Japanese role-playing game that came out on the original PlayStation. It's one of the reasons why I play video games. Like, everybody's got that game. Corey Lee has that game. It's Dark Souls. Fletch has that game. I don't know what his favorite game is of all time, but Fletch has got that game, why he likes video games. I'm sure you do as well. A game called Suikoden 2. And in this game, I'm just going to give a brief synopsis. There's like 108 different recruitable characters. So you got to think, picture 108 different wrestlers on a WWE game.
Well, nowadays, they would be lucky to have 8.
Yes. So, but you got to think, 108 different characters, all can be used in parties of 6, like just different combinations. And the game can last anywhere. Like, if I were to speed run the game, I could beat it in probably 8 hours, or like I could beat it in 90 hours. And for some reason, it seems like when I write an article, I don't like write mainstream articles. Like, there's a lot of new games coming out. You have like Elden Ring. Obviously, I could write about the Maddens and the NBAs when they come out. The new Forza's coming out. The new Halo's coming out. I don't write particularly about the new articles. The stuff that, like, if Fletch is writing an article, you see that on his website. If Corey Lee's writing an article, you see it on his website. I write the off-beaten path articles because I've wrote a couple mainstream ones. Like, I've wrote about a game called Dynasty Warriors, which is coming out end of this year in Japan and in February next year. And I think I wrote 2 articles about that, and both of them, one got like 500, one got like 600. I write about the game I just mentioned this weekend too. It's got almost 3,000 views in 4 days. So, like, I would say probably that game is my favorite, but I try to write about anything off the beaten path. And sometimes, I venture up. We can write about Netflix, movies, stuff like that too. So.
Okay, if XCW was to ever have a video game, what would be some features you would want on it?
Features. First off, any wrestling game, like if you tacked up the WWEs, you tacked up the TNAs, you tacked up AEW's future video games, WCW video games, one thing, I'll give you 2 things I really want. One thing definitely needs to be 2-player story mode. There's an old WWE game on PlayStation, it was WWF back then, I believe. I think it was the second one. You could play 2 players throughout the stories, and like, stuff could happen. You could be a tag team champion with the second player. Like, being able to play 2-player story mode, because we don't get a lot of couch co-op games these days. And a lot of times they're just not in video games, period. So something like that. And I think, like, if we could dive into the brain of Fletch, like, you do an XCW general manager mode, I think that would be even better than WWE's general manager mode. So give me 2-player, you can do 4-player story mode, just as long as you can play with friends. Give me a 2-player story mode, and give me an XCW general manager mode for sure.
Alright, got a few more questions left. So, what would need to happen for you to make a full-time in-ring return?
And the crowd goes quiet. Don't get me wrong. When it comes to wrestling, I love wrestling. Wrestling is one of the reasons why I am as close with Josh as I am. Like, our love for wrestling brought us together. Obviously, we have similar interests outside wrestling, but wrestling has brought us close. And, like, we've got to meet several people throughout the years. Hazards, the Cynicals, Corey Lees, the Tommies, and stuff like that. Like, wrestling's extremely important, but your body is extremely important too. So, I once turned down $800 for a permanent in-ring return. I had the money in my hand. I handed it back to Patrick O'Reilly at Shell gas station. I said, it's just not going to happen, man. And then Kean smarted off too, and I made fun of him for losing, state. Have fun with that. So it's not an easy answer. Money, which is out of the question, so I'm gonna say money. And like, hard to say because I don't want to say something that actually happened. Money or Ultimate X? I don't see Ultimate X ever happening. But if Ultimate X could happen, I could do possibly never, but money, because I got to take time. You mentioned the writing. It takes a lot. Like, obviously, Fletch takes a lot of his time for editing and stuff, and I think the next thing closest to editing that takes a lot of time is writing. You know, you got to do all the research and stuff like that. And I've been venturing more out into the video game world in general. I've been on podcasts. I think within the last 5 months, I think I've been on 6 or 7. It takes up a lot of time. So, money.
All right, you heard it here, XCW Galaxy. Start a GoFundMe, and you might get Chris Jones back. All right, with our final question here. Outside of wrestling, of course, how has XCW impacted your life?
Outside of wrestling, I've stated before, you go back to the emotional, until the end speech, you know, after the curtain call. We're all emotional, standing in the ring, like, you know, the people I've met in wrestling, you know. Obviously, I met Fletcher before XCW, but we weren't friends until then. I didn't have the best. After a certain age period, I didn't have, like, parental figures. Like, a quick explanation, like, my dad was great up until a certain age. When I got to, like, high school, like, freshman, maybe sophomore, he got into drugs at that time. He's completely okay now, doesn't do drugs and stuff like that, but there was a bad period for him. So it's like my dad raised me until I didn't need to be raised anymore, so to speak. My mom has been an alcoholic for a long time. She's a year sober now, I think, but we've been on that rodeo before. She, you know, had me toss 3 of them. My dad, obviously, changed my last name. I lived with my dad. She couldn't handle it because she was a young teenager. Then my mom didn't really want anything to do with me until the work was already done. So, ultimately, my uncle stepped up, played the potential father figure, but like in high school, you can ask Fletch, very rarely was I ever home. Like, before my dad got in trouble, went to jail for a little bit, I would go home, like, Fletch and Hazard had their license before me. One of them would take me to my house, I'd like change clothes, get a change of clothes, and I'd be at Fletch's house for like weeks at a time. I lived with my uncle a few times periodically throughout that time. It was mainly like to store my stuff because I was never home. My stepmom, who didn't need to play the parental figure after her and my dad got divorced, she's been there from Chris Jones age 3 to Chris Jones age 32. That's whose house I'll be at Thanksgiving. It's whose house I'll be at Christmas. That's who, you know, visits with my daughter, treats her just like it's her granddaughter, stuff like that. So if not for wrestling, my stepmom, my uncle, like, I'd probably be like, you know, the people you see on the streets, walking the streets, into drugs all the time, partying. I used to party all the time, but like the unhealthy partying. I met other potential parental figures, like, even though Fletch's mom doesn't always care for me or the decisions that I make, she had a positive impact in aspects of my life. Fletch's dad, he'll be here Thanksgiving. I'll be here Thanksgiving after my stepmom's house. Like, Fletch's dad's done quite a few things. He's provided a small positive portion. Cynical's mom, I've stayed with Cynical's not like I did with Fletch at his grandma's house, but like she helped us get our tuxes when we went to prom. She took the tuxes back after we went to prom. She let Cynical borrow her car. She gave Cynical his car. Like, Cynical's mom and the people that provided the parental advice throughout the years, they're like, a lot of people might not like certain aspects of them. Like, a lot of people might think Josh's mom's rude. A lot of people might think stuff about his dad. A lot of people might think stuff about Cynical's mom. But if not for those people, if not for Josh, if not for, Hazard, Chris Jones probably wouldn't be here. Chris Jones wouldn't have ever been the potential superstar that I am. Like a lot of people say I'm the best of all time. Like there's no way on God's given earth I'd be KKK level probably. I'd be DTCing it up on the streets with somebody, smoking pot, snorting cocaine off a hooker's ash crack. I don't know, But I had those positive influences, those family figures that treated me like family, brought me in, and that has helped me become the person who I am today. So to answer your question, I ultimately say a bigger and better family.
It's always a good thing with that being the final question. At the end of the day, it is your show, so I'll let you send the fans on out.
I want to give a big shout out to the homeboy, ACT, Alex Cardona Thompson, Mr. Money in the Bank, and I want to have everybody keep, the thoughts of J-Town in your mind as he did pass away, like we said at the beginning of the show. Hopefully you'll join us next time for No False Finish, Season 5, Episode 4.
I thought my career was over in 2003. Didn't know this guy. I started out calling him Fat Girl, picking on his little brother. This guy comes up after I hadn't been in wrestling. Gave me the option to come check out XCW. So that's what I did. But when I started, I brought my attitude. I brought the feeling that I was better than everybody else. And it showed. Watch April, watch 6th, watch May 7th, watch May 14th. Probably to about July. And then I had to sit down with Josh. And I'm still cocky, egotistical motherfucker. But I put it all behind me, and I bettered myself. One of the fastest rising superstars, and my only goal was to wrestle as much as I could. So I started at BBW. We ended it. Then I tried to bring in new people. We got Carnage here. Talk Jerky the Roman. And congratulations to Carnage, James Gerke, everybody else that's going on to All-Star Pro Wrestling. We had our original chance. I passed it up. I went on, did some things I shouldn't have done. My chance was to continue.